Tonia here, your host of The Alchemy of Me, where we navigate the anatomy of humanity through the lens of science and spirituality. Let's unearth the layers and unravel the systems in place that dim who we are and how we live and experience life. On this journey together, we'll weave in an eclectic blend of mind, body, energy medicine, concepts, tools, and practices that'll nourish the seeds, the fire, that gold of intelligence that is you. This is an opportunity, your opportunity to reclaim, to rediscover, to transform, to alchemize you. The Alchemy of Me show starts now. Hello, Tonia here, your host of The Alchemy of Me, where we navigate the anatomy of humanity through the lens of science and spirituality. And today I am excited to have Dr. Lou Walters with me. And Dr. Lou is a naturopathic doctor, and he really, he's been a big part of my healing journey. So I'm so excited to have him here. A little bit about Dr. Lou. He is a naturopathic doctor who specializes in treating people, not disease names. He graduated summa cum laude from the National University of Natural Medicine in 2009. But the focus of his practice is to go beyond the symptoms and to help people work to find the source of their health issues so they can truly thrive in life. So welcome, Dr. Lou. Anything you want to add there to kind of get started here, just about yourself, sharing a little bit with the audience today?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Tonia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before I was a doctor, I still am, but I was a patient. So that's actually what led me to become a doctor in the first place. Growing up, I was overweight. I ate every meal like Thanksgiving and would just stuff the food down until I was full. We lived on fast food and junk food. I was obese and sick all the time. After college, I moved in with a couple friends, started to exercise and run, started cutting down on how much I ate and gradually making changes in what I ate. And I lost almost 100 pounds and transformed not just my physical health, but my mental health as well. I looked into going to conventional medical school, but there just weren't any nutrition classes or exercise therapeutics classes. So I did other things. Eventually, I was in a couple bad car accidents that left me in chronic pain. And I went to my medical doctor, who put me on anti-inflammatories and pain meds for 2 years, which worked. I went to a chiropractor, and he just adjusted me the same way 4 times a week for 2 years. When my insurance ran out, he told me I was as good as I was going to get. My medical doctor told me I had to be on these medications for the rest of my life, and that both of them told me I should never run again or hike or play softball, any of the things I love doing. In my late 20s, that didn't seem realistic. So I started going to any doctor I could find who I thought might be able to help me. I finally found a naturopathic doctor who I didn't know what that was, but a friend recommended him. And as he explained, your body has the wisdom and desire to heal itself. You just have to give it the things it needs and remove the obstacles. And if I wasn't getting better, then there was something that was missing or something interfering. Took some time to figure out, but we did. And I not only no longer had pain, but I didn't need to take anything for it. I started running again. Since then, I've run marathons and ultras. So it just transformed my health and my life, just not being in pain all the time. And then for me, it wasn't a decision to become a naturopathic doctor. It was a calling. And it's not a knock on chiropractors, not a knock on medical doctors. There's a time and place for all that. But we want to make sure that we're looking at all other options as well, too.
I love that. I mean, there's so much there, and I suspect that resonates a lot with people. We all have opportunities in life, challenges, things that we go through that can become part of our medicine, part of how we do life. And we can either choose to continue down that path and continue to live in the fast food nation. This is how I grew up. This is how I learned to be. Or we can shift and say, hey, I want something different. And then just allow that curiosity to kind of to come in. And so I love that, because it's like, it's a calling, it's a wanting more. There's so much there. So that's where I love that we're, today we get to talk about how to take your health to the next level. And what a better way to do that and to kind of provide that framework by being a patient first, be a patient, and then to become a doctor. So just starting out, as we're gonna, kind of tap into this a bit, let's talk about what health is. Let's get curious. Let's explore. Let's maybe discover a new way of health. And it's an opportunity to create. There's a new paradigm here that we can look at by just maybe redefining what that is and what that means.
Sure. So I think before we can talk about health, we do have to define it. And people have different definitions. So some people define health as just the absence of symptoms, which is more, if we're thinking of a staircase, is, bottom step sort of things. The World Health Organization defines it as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or symptoms or infirmity. And that goes back to 1948. I define it more as the ability to have resilience and find balance with the physical aspects of your health, the mental and emotional aspects, social, spiritual, environmental, financial, occupational, all those aspects of life, and to have purpose in life. So it's a little bit more comprehensive. There's a lot more steps than just no symptoms.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing, so it sounds complicated, right? It can feel like a lot. But I mean, is it? Is it I mean, it has a lot, there's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot of opportunities, and that's where like the curiosity comes in, right? So it's the just knowing that there's an opportunity to maybe today we redefine what health is. And I think, saying that maybe the script in which we are living life and have been living life is defined on something from the 1940s. And perhaps it's time to shift into this new paradigm. Is that kind of what you're saying?
The World Health Organization, it was more, the point of that was more that there's more to health than just the absence of disease or symptoms in general. There's more to it. And I like to think of all the things I listed off almost like a pizza or a pie with different slices. So you want to, diet and exercise are incredibly important. I'm not taking away from that, but so much we focus just on what we're eating and are we exercising, and we tune out, are we, feel financially secure? Are we happy at work? What are our relationships like? What all these other aspects of our life that have a tremendous impact on our health as well.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not, it's just one layer or one slice of the pizza.
Yeah.
Yes, so that makes sense to me. So then from there, so how, from a healthcare perspective, like what does that look like in regards to health? Like, so how do we look at it through this lens if we're looking at it through these other pieces? Adding in these other components, how do we care for our health in that way?
So for somebody to look through this lens and work on it at a different level, is first thing is we need to get past the idea that our symptoms are our problem, or the problem, and that if we're not having symptoms, that there's nothing going on, we're completely fine. So most chronic diseases take decades to show up. So, the way I like to explain it, and I have a drawing of this in my office, it's like a little spiral that starts off super, super small, and it just keeps getting a little bigger and a little bigger. Eventually it gets big enough that we get symptoms, and eventually, if it keeps going, it gets big enough that we give it a disease name, and eventually it'll turn into other degeneration and function loss. But that would set the thing in motion, could have been years or decades beforehand. It just didn't get big enough yet to see any symptoms. So we don't want to wait for pathology. That's, more of a sick care model. You go to the doctor once a year, they do your labs, everything looks fine, come back in a year. That's just waiting for disease to happen, as opposed to, are we doing everything we can to actively help with healthcare and really make sure that everything was established early on the way it was supposed to, that sets you up, that resiliency that I talked about, that there's always going to be some stresses in life that, that push us, whether it be, temperature changes, like the fact that it snowed 5 inches in Montana yesterday,
Yes, it did.
in May, that, being able to, our ability to maintain some form of homeostasis, that, despite internal and external pressures and stresses, that we're able to maintain those normal conditions in balance.
Okay. So how from there, so say somebody, two examples. So say somebody is in a place right now, where they feel healthy, but there's just there's something that's not quite right. Something feels off. How would, how do we approach that? Where do we begin?
First of all, listen to that
Mm-hmm.
if something feels off. I can't tell you how many people have come in. They went to another doctor, typically their medical doctor, and they looked at their labs and they said everything was normal. You're fine. It must be in your head. There's nothing going on, and it's, there's something going on if you're feeling off. So, and the solution to that is not typically going to be a green pill or a white pill. We don't want to just switch, one for the other. We want to really get back to, why is this happening? Where is it coming from? And, again, oftentimes these things, have what set it in motion has been there for years or decades. So it takes time. That's the so often people come in because we've been conditioned. We've been programmed, that we go to the doctor when we feel terrible. They give us a pill, and then we don't come back, or we just keep taking the pill, as opposed to, let's really proactively work on it and really find the source of this. And just like going to the source of a river, sometimes it takes a while to get there, and the journey isn't always, a flat, direct line. There's there's
Mm-hmm.
there's some things to traverse on the way back.
Mm-hmm.
And then having a
Yes.
guide who knows the path to be able to walk you through that. That's the other thing that's important. And we'll talk more about that and the other things as well. But it's completely getting outside that normal box that we tend to think about with doctors. And a lot of times with naturopathic doctors, we tend to get caught up in it, that, we're just going to give a green pill instead of a white one, and that's because it's natural, it's better. But if we're given willow bark instead of aspirin, and, the person stops the willow bark or the aspirin and their symptoms come right back, we really haven't done much. We haven't really improved health. And, if somebody comes in with back pain and I do some body work and I help their back pain go away, and, 5 years later they have a heart attack, did we really help their health? Or if they're, depressed or anxious because they don't like their job, or they're not in a healthy relationship, did we really help their health just because I made the back pain go away? So, we want to have our measuring sticks are important in this. So it's not just, the labs are in the normal range or not, or that you have symptoms or not, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, and there's a couple things that came up for me when you were describing that, because it almost makes me think of, the aspirin versus a willow bark, because this actually just came up this week with my son. And he was saying the willow bark isn't working. And I knew, I was like, I know something else is going on, right? And so what did I do? I scheduled an appointment with you. Because there's something, and it's come up a couple times. And so it's, I am not sure. I'm doing my best, but I am one person. And it sometimes takes a team, right? You need others to help. So like me giving him the willow bark, and it not working, it reminds me of, like, you have a scar and you don't want to see the scar, so you put a Band-Aid over it. The scar is still there. And it's not obviously doing anything. It's a temporary solution to seeing the scar, but it's still there. So I think for me, something that, on my own journey, what's been super important, and I think this is important for literally everyone, is it is super important to make sure you have the support you need. So if you see a doctor or you're seeing an Ayurvedic doctor, an naturopath doctor, Western medicine, it doesn't matter, acupuncture, whatever modality, if it doesn't feel right, if that person, if there isn't a connection, try somebody else, right? Like it's not it's not always going to feel like you want to have the people in your court that you feel like you can go to, right? I mean, that's an important piece of this. As a healthcare, practitioner, you too have people in your court to support you so that you can support others, right? I mean, that's kind of a piece of this as well.
Yes, I have, I as much as, I do well and am an expert in what I do, sometimes people need other things. Sometimes we need to work as a team, or we just, needs, I don't do, say, acupuncture. I don't put needles, and sometimes that's what somebody needs. So I have acupuncturists in town that I know that I can refer to, that I know that they do good quality work, and I can, trust that they'll take care of the patients. And then, as you said, personality, you want to make sure that you get along and you feel comfortable with any of your providers. You want to talk to them and interview them. I remember years ago, I was going through a tough time after a breakup, and I started interviewing therapists, and I was telling a friend this, and he said, "You can do that? You don't just pick
Oh
one,
yeah.
the insurance list and go?" I was like, "Yeah, you want to, if I'm going to be opening my heart and soul to this person, I want to make sure I feel comfortable with them." So it's the same thing, with doctors. And many, I know naturopaths, I can't speak to medical doctors, but many of us will offer free consultations so that, we can hear what's going on, see if we think we can help, and also give you a chance to see if our approach and our personality is what you're looking for. And in actually pretty much I don't make it mandatory, but pretty darn close with teenagers when they come in. I want the parents to bring them in for the consult first, so that they feel that they have ownership in this, and that they have a big voice in it, that they're not just being told to be there because of their parents.
That's really, really important. It's almost it's teaching that how important it is to connect with those in your circle, again, as an individual, and early on, and how important that is, not just that mom told me I have to be here. Um, so
I should make that
yes.
mandatory for husbands. I
Yes.
I can't tell you how many have come in and I ask, so what brings you in? My wife told me I had to come in. I don't know why I'm here.
You're snoring too loud. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm trying to remember when I talked to you, when we first started kind of talking about this idea of you coming on the show, you brought up a really cool, interesting idea about the levels of health. And I would completely butcher it if I tried to bring it up, but I remember it brought me back to, my freshman year philosophy class reading Plato, Plato's Republic. And it was just so beautiful because I think it was the first time where I was able to actually remember like why I took that class, like actually brought that material back to me, some 20 some years later. So can you, before we go to break, can you kind of bring that in? Do you remember
Oh, I
what
remember.
I'm,
So
okay.
it's Plato's allegory of the cave. So the idea is that there's humans that are living in a cave with their backs to a fire, and they spend their whole lives staring at the shadows on the wall, just believing that that's what life is, and too afraid to turn and face the fire. And they will fight to the death to stay staring at those shadows. And then there's another group that have turned and faced the fire, and now they just spend their whole lives staring at the fire. And then there's another group that see the light at the entrance of the cave, and they have gotten up and they have decided to leave the security of the cave to explore what is outside the cave. So the way I look at it is, very often the people who are just, focused on symptoms and nothing else, those are like staring at the shadows on the wall. The people who have turned and they want to, take something natural for their symptoms, or they're willing to work up and try to find some of the triggers to what's triggering their symptoms, are more like the people who are staring at the flames. But the triggers, this is, I call it the false source. So oftentimes people will find a trigger of their symptoms and their issues, and they remove those. We'll say heartburn. Somebody eats. They figured out that if they drink milk, it gives them heartburn, so they don't drink milk and they avoid heartburn. They think they got the source, but really
Mhm.
that's just a trigger that's pushing the button. There's something higher up that's actually, that's just hitting the imbalance. It's not the imbalance itself. So most people stop there. So I see that as the staring at the fire people. The people who are willing to go upriver and really pursue their health and different higher levels of health and really reset all those imbalances, I see as the people willing to leave the cave. Is that more or less how I
Yeah.
described it the first time?
Yeah. No, I love that because it is, I mean, and those are all choices, right?
There's no judgment on any of those people. That's
Hmm.
just where you happen to.
Yep.
So, if I were to, if you're somebody who just wants to focus on the symptoms, me trying to get you upriver, you're going to fight me tooth and nail because that's not where you want to go and what you're interested in. So it would be a waste of their time and a waste of my time, to try to make that happen. So just trying to meet people where they are and recognizing that there's different levels, different steps, and so, as I tell people in the office, I have a little diagram. There's different stages. When you get the stage you want to be at, please let me know so I can work on trying to keep you there as opposed to pushing you further.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, so I mean, meeting people where they're at and knowing that there are there are levels to our health and opportunities as well. So we will pause right there as we take a little break. Before we do so, Dr. Lou, do you want to let people know how they can contact you?
Sure. My website is thesourcewellnesscenter.com. So the word the source, SOURCE, wellnesscenter.com. And then all other information about me and the practice is on there.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Lou. We'll be right back.
Sounds good.
We are back, and you are tuned into the Alchemy of Me, and I am Tonia, and I'm here with Dr. Lou Walters, and we are talking about how to take your health to the next level. And as we transition here, so we want to make sure we have enough time to cover how we do that. We want to first dive into first what is a disease. So kind of looking at that, unpacking that a little bit. So Dr. Lou, let's go there next. So what is disease? How would you define disease?
So I define this disease as the loss of the ability to maintain homeostasis. So that is um, a physiologic term. It's basically maintaining a stable internal environment, that all our conditions, all our set points are able to stay the same no matter what's going on internally or externally. The Claude Bernard is considered the father of physiology, and he described it as all the vital mechanisms, varied as they are, have only one object, that of preserving constant the condition of life in the internal environment. So physically, biochemically, mental, emotionally, anytime we are pushed off our balance point and we're straining to get back to it is going to lead to symptoms. There really is no such thing as disease or pathology. There's really only adaptive physiology. The body is trying to put us back into balance as best it can, and it's not able to get us there, so it's compensating in any way to keep us functioning. And over time, it can lead to degeneration and complete loss if we don't address it correctly. So what should happen is we're in a balanced state. There's some sort of external factor, whether it be physical, chemical, or emotional, that pushes us a little bit off balance. And then the body should react to that factor to bring us back into balance. And that can look like be some sort of internal compensation. It can be a discharge if you get an infection, say, or an injury, some sort of inflammation that brings us back to normal. And then healthy function is brought back and we're back in balance. If we're not able to clear that and bring balance back, that's when we start getting symptoms, we start getting diseases. Now we can, the analogy I like to use well, I have two. One is a dandelion. So, you have the flower sticking up, and we will avoid for time reasons why we shouldn't be trying to kill all the dandelions. But if we just snap the stem, the roots are still there and they're going to show up somewhere else. Another analogy I use is the check engine light on the car. We can put a piece of duct tape, whether it's white or green, on top of the check engine light, but what's going on under the engine is still going on. It's still not in balance. And if we keep driving, we're eventually going to get a loud noise. You turn the radio up to ignore the noise. Eventually, you get a rough ride. You get smoke coming out until the car breaks down. So, just trying to manage symptoms again, it's a lower level of healthcare. We're not really getting to the deeper issues, and we're aiming for is not getting by in life, but thriving in life, and living a long, fulfilling life. So we want to do all we can to make that happen. And when it comes to homeostasis, so what are the things we need to look at as far as balance goes? Well, there's certain characteristics that are, as living organisms, we all need to be able to do. We need to be able to move. We need to be responsive to and be able to react to changes, growth, reproduction, digestion, absorbing what we digested, assimilating it or changing it into different forms, respiration, circulation, and then excretion of waste. If any of those are out of balance, that will lead to a disease state or symptoms over time. We need to go back. It's not the heartburn, but what part of that process is leading to it in the first place. And it's not the milk or the spicy food. It's something else that's higher up that we need to bring back in balance. That's the way that I'm thinking about it and looking at it. We're not just trying to mask the thing or just remove the thing that is triggering the issue, but actually restoring balance, that when stresses in life are going to happen, you're able to return to balance on your own, that you're not just having to take something for the rest of your life.
Yes, thank you. And of course, it brings me back to my days of reading Plato in college. And I'm sure many people have had this experience. You mentioned heartburn, and so confused as to why that would pop up. Why am I getting heartburn? And then going to the doctor and the doctor prescribing me, I think it was a Merpazole or something. I don't know. And so I took that and I was like, oh, it works. And then lo and behold, I stopped drinking so much beer and eating so much pizza that I no longer had heartburn. And I didn't need the prescription of omeprazole. Heartburn it was a symptom. That's a very soft example of a fun time of my life that I think a lot of people experience. So and then it gets more serious, and when the symptoms, I think of like when I came in to talk to you, and it was very far into my journey, so many symptoms, but it was that slow rumble that had been going on for a very long time, and not being able to really identify and not listening, to be honest. If I'm being completely honest, I knew it was there, but I wasn't checking in. It's like, oh, I'm not feeling well. I probably should work out a couple more times a week. That'll make me feel better. When it was not what I needed. So, I think it goes back to when it's a listening to your body, seeing that there are symptoms, but then too, going back to what you're first saying, it's like, even before that, it's like starting out from that place of balance, before any of that comes up.
And we can get down to brass tacks right now if you like. So
let's do it.
As we're developing, there's different time frames where different organs, glands, parts of the brain are maturing and connecting. If there are stresses or traumas that happen that are unresolved during that connection period, that can set somebody up for developing heartburn, when they're in college or otherwise, or set them up for an autoimmune disease when they're 30 or 40 or 50, or set them up for cancer. So, those, and then anything that's built on top of that. So say, phase two from, 18 months to age 7 is the second phase of the development that I'm looking at. Anything that develops after that, then is on shaky ground. So you have to go back and reset all of those things. So, from roughly age 2 to age 7, it's the thyroid gland and the digestive system that are maturing and forming those connections. So some big stress happens in that time frame, and it's not resolved or addressed properly for one reason or another. Say a loved grandparent dies, or you lose your favorite teddy bear, and if that's just kind of poo-pooed by your parents, because they're busy doing other things as parents, sometimes, as adults have things going on, that can then, all those physiologic changes of that stress then affect that connection, and it doesn't connect strongly, and it creates these patterns that then, as I said, spiral and get bigger and bigger over time. That person's then, tends to be more likely to, when they get stressed or pushed by something environmentally, that they develop digestive symptoms.
Yes, and I think that is really important because that speaks to everything that I think we've probably both been through, and it's like the stages, the early experiences matter.
Yeah.
And we carry them forward. And again, it comes back to that, the visual of the spiral that you mentioned. It could just be a little blip, a little dot very early on, even I don't know, in utero, I guess. I'm trying to think, or before, whatever, however far back you want to go.
It can actually be before you were even born. So, if we want to talk, where do these diseases come from? One of the things is that we've learned through the Human Genome Project is epigenetics. That it used I used to be a high school teacher, and I taught molecular genetics. So it used to be thought that, you had a gene is a recipe for a protein, and there's genes. That's what our DNA is made up of, genes. So, we have basically our DNA is a big cookbook for proteins, and it was thought that there was one gene for every protein in the body. So, there's 2 or 3, I forget the exact number, but roughly 2 to 300,000 different proteins in the body. So they expected to find that many genes, and they found about 20 to 30,000 genes. I think it was about 30,000 genes. And that's it. So the numbers didn't make sense. So what they figured out is that each gene actually codes for about 5 to 6 different proteins. And it's what is going on in our environment that washes over those genes that then affects how the recipe is read and what protein will get made, or will it get made. So the things that we are doing in our lives, the stresses that we're under, the foods we're eating, the relationships we're in, the exercise that we're doing, the things we're exposed to environmentally, all alters and affects our DNA. And it used to be thought that when you had a child, they got a fresh start, that what you did in your life didn't get passed on. But what we discovered is that's not the case, that these genes that what we were doing in our lives, whether they're activated or inactivated or how they're being read, gets passed on to our children. And so it has been traced back to, childhood cancer, pediatric cancer, sometimes back to the grandparents and what they were doing in their life. So, all these things factor in. And, with epigenetics, there used to be this, well, there still is this discussion whether it's nature or nurture, whether it's just the genes or it's what, you do in your life and your environment. So many of our patterns get put into us early on in childhood by the people that we're around and by TV and devices, what we're watching. They did experiments where they had genetically identical mice that embryologically, as they were developing, they bathed them in different nutrients. And those mice had, even though their genes were exactly the same, they developed different hair color, different eye color, different body sizes, different risks of different diseases, just based on what nutrients they were given in utero before they were born. Now, a lot of people, they just think, okay, once you're born, it's done, it's set, there's nothing more. But there was another experiment where they actually, used the dad mice involved to see how active they were and whether they were active with the babies or not. And the mice, their fur color and their weight was affected by how much their dad was involved in their life. So things that happen after we're born also play a huge impact in that. So it goes back, to conception or before. It's not just, when you're 30, are you eating paleo and, doing CrossFit? There's a lot of
Mhm.
that goes into it as far as what's affecting our health. So we
Yeah.
hear the word no as kids tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times, which can create a sense of anxiety and worry and self-esteem. And they did a study about 15 years ago that about 80% of the average American's thoughts about themselves are negative and critical, which that has an impact on our physiology. Our thoughts and our emotions directly impact our physiology. And, if you most people don't like to speak in public. So if I said you were going to have to speak in front of 20,000 people, just the idea of that for most people is going to cause, their heart racing, sweating, nausea, maybe having to go to the bathroom, belly pain. They're not even doing it. They're just thinking about doing it.
Mhm.
So our thoughts that we're having and whether we feel stressed, whether we feel loved, connected, all of that plays a tremendous impact on our overall health. So, we want to stand guard at the doorway of our mind and how we're seeing ourselves, how we're talking to ourselves.
Yeah, and that's powerful too, because I guarantee, and I love that you just paused there, because everything you shared, it could come as a little bit of a trigger, because some, as a parent, as a daughter, as whatever, these roles that we play, right? Um, we start thinking about, oh boy, what have I done to my kiddo? What did I say to my mom? All of these things, right? And then and then it's the dialogue. And so it's like that relationship you have with yourself. And so it's like you get to not only like live the lived experience, but it's like on a loop. And it could be a pretty powerful loop of, this is an opportunity to shift into something different, to do something different. Or it could also be like, I can't believe, this is this is what kind of parent I am. That's what I do. My kid is probably destroyed. So it's funny. So I don't know. Let's, can we talk about that a little bit more?
We certainly can. So I'm not trying to like blame everybody's problems on their parents. So
No, no, no,
I
no.
work with a lot of pediatrics and parents, especially new parents, and I let them know, because I see the look on their face, and I just tell them, look, you don't need to try to be perfect. There's good, no matter how perfect you were, the child eventually will find something to blame you for. It's okay. Just
Mhm.
do the best you can. And that you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be issues, but it's how you address those issues. That's really
Mhm.
the important thing. There's going to be times that, we all get busy, we get stressed, we get short, but we want to acknowledge that and correct that. Just like if, say, I mentioned before, the beloved grandmother dies, being able to help that child understand and process their grief so that they still feel loved and supported and they understand it. It's not like anytime you have any stress or trauma as a child is going to cause, problems later in life. It's just if they're not balanced or corrected at the time. And then, with, our brain waves. So much of our subconscious is developed prior to age 7. And what's happening is that the kids before then are basically sponges. So when they're in delta waves, the first couple years of their life, and then theta waves up until age 7, they are in a sleep state and in a semi, like a trance state. And they have no filter to be able to analyze the information that's coming in, that they They can't say, oh, that's not right, or they were just in a bad mood. Everything that they hear and see just gets put into their subconscious. It creates all these patterns, basically their hard drive for life. And they're absorbing everything they see from parents and teachers and TV on how to interact with other people. So you may find if I know I do, I sometimes will say something and I'm like, that's not me, that's my dad. Like, where did that come from? That
Yes.
just got imprinted in me from when I was a little one that I wasn't even aware of, and then it starts ruling your life. And then we have different experiences, and anytime there's emotion tied to things, this is what really sinks it deep into us. So, we'll use 9/11 as an example. Most people who are alive then could tell you, where they were and what they were doing. But 9/10 probably couldn't tell you what was going on that day. So in emotion will drive things deeper in us. So if we have a stressful or a beautiful experience that's really emotionally intense, that can drive, the lessons that we perceive from that will drive into our patterns in our subconscious as well. So in order to change any of those things, it's going to take typically some work and some emotion and some focus, not just, thinking about it lightly. I mean, it really takes some depth to be able to make those changes. Um, I don't know if I answered your question or not, or if I gave you a bunch of more.
No, you did. You did. I mean, you know me. I'm always going to have more questions. So I know we only have a limited amount of time. So that's where it's a good thing that they cut me off from my questions, and then we get to do it again at a later date. One thing, and so I love, it must be my 20 years as a geologist. I'm such a visual person. So like, even I'm just, there's like a canvas, I'm painting pictures as you're describing all of these things. And I'm imagining, like, as you're describing this, I am seeing the ocean and really any body of water. And it's like the sand, and then there's the surface of the water, and then you just bringing up, like, allowing these ideas to come up, to what it does for me. And I'm curious if maybe this is just a me thing, but either way, I'm just going to share it. It's like you bringing it up allows for those ideas and curiosities, maybe unprocessed emotions, things that I don't have awareness of. So things that are maybe, they're not in my awareness. They kind of bubble up to the surface. And so it's like they become something where I'm like, oh, interesting. And that's where that whole idea of, once they're there, once you see them, you have that opportunity to get curious or not. And I think for me, like, I lean into it in a curiosity, except sometimes when it's very challenging, and I think this happens for a lot of people, is not quite there yet. I'm not ready. It's like maybe there's a few more things that need to happen, a few more layers that I need to go through, a few more things that need to bubble up before, and come up to the surface before I can really unpack that one. I don't know if I
No,
just
that
thought
makes
I'd
good
share that
sense.
visual.
You will keep getting the same lesson until you learn it. And if you're not
Yes,
ready or willing at that time, it will keep coming back around, um,
yes,
until you are. And sometimes, things have to get big enough to be willing to face them.
exactly.
That's happened
Until,
in my life. I'm not exempt from any of this. Uh,
mhm.
so and that getting curious was a beautiful statement that you said, because our emotions are just messages that it's our body's trying to tell us something. So the quote unquote negative emotions like anger or frustration or anxiety or depression, those are just messages. Your body and your nervous system's just trying to tell you something. So if you get curious, I'm anxious. Why? What is it trying to tell me in this? Okay, did I prepare enough for this? Or am I concerned? I have a previous experience that this is not going to happen or is going to happen, or just trying to get the message and then figuring out what you need to do to adjust. That's all it is. Viktor Frankl said that there between
Mm.
stimulus and response there is a space, and the bigger you can make that space, that will define your reality. So, if we have our hot buttons that something happens and we're just on our automatic program gets triggered and we just respond. But if we can add more space and choose our response, we can choose more how our life is going to go and what our reality is like.
I love that. I mean, messages from a messenger. Your body is a messenger. Like it's telling you. I love that because again, it's just another way yeah, to kind of create peace with it. And sometimes you're just, you need a couple messages before the big one that you're ready to really face. And again, going back to inviting in support. It's not a journey of one. We are here to do this together, right? To experience life together, community, and that looks different for everyone. It's not just your biological family. It's having that tribe, whatever that looks like, and it's different for everyone. So I want to make sure we save plenty of time for kind of the how.
Sure.
How do we take health to the next level? Now that we've kind of talked about all these kind of all these pieces leading up to it, how do we get there? Can you kind of
Sure. So
yeah.
the first thing you have to do is you have to be honest with yourself. You have to look at, where am I? Where am I in the spectrum of health? Where am I versus where do you want to be? If you just, you have heartburn, you want it to go away, and that you just want to take something, omeprazole or otherwise, DGL, deglycerinated licorice, that's fine. You just be honest with yourself where you are and where you want to be. Um, and then you got to close the gap. Whatever that space is, you have to be willing to do what it takes. And most people will get stuck in, how do I do it? And the more important question is why. If your why is big enough, why you want to do this, and there's enough emotion behind it, you will figure out the how no matter what, even if you've never done it before. So you need to keep perspective on why you want to make these changes. And if it's, again, if it's strong enough, it's more powerful enough, emotional enough, you will be more likely to follow through. Because I mean, how many people, I mean, I'm sure people can relate to, resolutions where, I'm going to exercise or I'm going to lose weight, and a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, and you're right back doing what you're doing before. Your why wasn't big enough. It wasn't strong enough to make changes. Um, then we got to get back in touch with some natural laws that govern all of us. So building these into our daily habits so that our body can start to function the way that it's supposed to. We get stuck in what's normal, what's common versus what's normal. So, you go into the grocery store and, you go through and there's all these processed foods and they're sold in the store and they taste good. But most of those are food-like substances. They're not actually food. And they're not helping our health. They're actually taking away from it. Or all the lights at night and the screens that are going to affect our nervous system and our endocrine system, that's going to cause, our sleep not to be as refreshing. And then we get tired and then we drink coffee. It's common, but it's not necessarily normal. So what are the natural laws? Some things that people can do or should be doing is, you want to be breathing in fresh air and breathing deeply every day, making that part of your normal routine. So when we inhale, it increases our stress state, and when we exhale, it increases our what's called parasympathetic rest, digest, and heal state. So making sure your exhale is longer than your inhale. Drinking clean water and drinking enough water. So if we don't get thirsty till we're about 3% down, but we start getting brain fog and memory issues at 1% down. So we don't ever want to wait till we get thirsty. We want to drink enough water. Now, for people who have kidney issues or heart issues, they need to talk and work with their doctor on appropriate amounts of liquids, because too much water for them can be deadly. For most people, half their body weight in ounces is a good starting point. And you want to drink that away from meals, not with meals, because if you drink it with meals, it dilutes your stomach acid and causes digestive issues. You want to get enough sleep every night. So it's best to be asleep by 10:30, unless if you're a shift worker, that's, you do the best you can with, but you want to get at least 7 to 9 hours every night. When I ask people how much sleep are you getting, they'll tell me, I can get by on. It's like, I didn't even
Mm.
ask you your bare minimum that you can survive on. How much do you really need and feel your best when you get? That's really what we're aiming for. There's a reason, evolutionary wise, why we spend a third of our day asleep. It's because that's how we process and rebuild and whatnot. And there's numerous studies that have come out that people who get less sleep tend to live shorter lives. They're higher risk for cardiovascular disease and other health issues. The saying, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." Well, you're going to be sleeping sooner than you'd like. So you might as well get it in now and really enjoy your life and feel refreshed. Uh,
Mhm.
Eating whole nutritious foods. There's not necessarily one diet that's best for everybody. We like to get dogma and tribes and we pick our one thing, but figuring it out what is best for you is one of the things I help patients with. But whole foods is consistent among all those things. Fruits, vegetables for most. We need protein, and minerals. So we want to make sure we're getting the nutrients that our body physically needs to function. Activity and exercise is another natural law, doing that on a daily basis. Now, activity can be, and exercise can be a stress. And I know, for those not, familiar with the culture in Montana, especially Bozeman, is we tend to go all out and, we got to run a marathon in the morning and then we got to go hike 20 miles and then we got to go float the river. But exercise is a stress and it can start breaking our body down if we're doing too much. So we want to get the appropriate type and the appropriate amount and intensity for our each individual. Taking time to rest and to play and laugh. So I write prescriptions to adults to play and laugh, and kids find it hilarious, but I actually write them down and give them to them because as we get older, as we become adults, the first thing we cut out of our busy day is fun and play. There's no time for it, but it nourishes our spirit and feeds our soul. So we need to make time for that every day. And I can't tell you what's fun for you. You have to know what that is and then take time. For some people, it's playing the guitar or going for a run or reading or putting a puzzle together, whatever it happens to be, just doing that for yourself each day. And then time socializing. As you said before, we are social creatures. We are supposed to
Mhm.
socialize. So, whether that be with family, friends, but doing something that you're engaged socially and enjoying connecting with people. Um, I don't know how much time we have, but there's a town in Pennsylvania in the mountains called Roseto, Pennsylvania. Malcolm Gladwell talks about it in his book, Outliers. So in the 50s and 60s, they realized these people, these Italian Americans who had come from the town Roseto in Italy, they weren't dying of cardiovascular, of heart attacks and strokes like other people were in the country. They actually had 50% less than everywhere else in the country. So they did all these studies on them, looking at their diet and their genes and all these their health care. And what they came to find was they weren't eating a healthy diet. They didn't have any exceptional genes. They didn't have any exceptional health care that other people didn't have. They looked at other people from other or from the same town in Italy that moved to other parts of America and what their health was. And it was, like everybody else. What they found in this town, though, is they had such a close-knit social community. That was their secret. That was their health difference. So that community, they have found that, that can reduce the plaques in your arteries, that we see with heart attacks by 50%, just feeling loved and connected. So it's not, again, diet and exercise are important, but they're not the only things. And then lastly, getting outside, getting sun, fresh air, time in nature, grounding, all of that is important as well. So starting with those is a great place to get going. And then there's other treatment guidelines that, help with waste elimination and digestion, all sorts of other things that list that I gave before of all the systems and things we're trying to get in balance that we want to work with. But just getting those things in your daily practice is a great start.
That's a wonderful list. And I don't know if you noticed, but I might have been taking notes.
I did, yeah.
And which is funny because I'm pretty sure you prescribed having fun to me, and that's not the first time I have heard that. And I like to think I have a good time, but sometimes, man, life can feel a little serious sometimes. And man, the having fun and laughing is fuel for the soul. Absolutely. It's so important.
I'm going to give you a little secret. for you and the listeners. So no matter what happens in life, we pick something to focus on and we decide what that means. So if, you said, if something happens and you're serious,
Mhm.
that's one reaction. You could have a different reaction and you get to choose that. And that's again, that pause between the stimulus and the response. The example I like to use in the office is my cousin loves to surf. For him, being on a surfboard is a Zen spiritual experience where he is one with God and the universe. I am on a surfboard next to him and I hear the Jaws theme song. I see the strike from below, my leg coming off, the blood spurting out. We are doing the exact same thing in the exact same place right next to each other, having two totally different experiences based on what we're focused on and based on what the meaning we're giving it is. So, I do this all the time because, somebody will cut me off in traffic and, I might get from the East Coast, so I get a little heated at first and then, okay, I think what else could this mean? Okay. Have you ever cut somebody off in traffic? Yeah. Could they just be late for work? Maybe they didn't notice. Like, did they purposely do it for you? So I try to come up with other alternatives for the meaning of things as opposed to just the knee-jerk response.
I love that. I'm in your camp too with surfing. As somebody who lived in Southern California for 10 years, and I would swim back in very quickly after thinking about Jaws and looking for the shark fin. So I get it. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Well, that's, of course, we ran out of time, but I think we got, I mean, to me, just to wrap up, like I'm just so excited to be able to hopefully provide, a little more context on how we can all take our health to the next level, how we have the ability to do that, and that there's steps to do that, and to not do it feel like we need to do it all at once, and that there's many different ways. So it's going back and listening to our body, calling in your tribe, calling in your people, and just saying yes. So wrapping up here, thank you so much, Dr. Lou. It has been an honor and a pleasure. I've had so much fun. I'm sure I'll have more questions again, and we will, look forward to having you back on the Alchemy of Me soon. Is there anything else you want to add as we wrap up?
First of all, it's been a pleasure, and I'd be happy to come back another time if there's a desire for it. And then, just for those people who are willing or looking to leave the cave or out of the cave, it is possible to work back and reset those things, those early traumas, and that connection with the brain and the different organs and glands. And then also for all people, we tend to think of, we have a goal, say with weight loss, so we want to hit this weight and then we're done. But it really, health is an ongoing journey and process. It doesn't just, you hit this one marker or this one lab number and you're done. You don't have to do anything again. So it's something you want to actively partake in because it affects the quality and length of your life. So, keeping that in mind as far as, what do you want out of life and the experience you want to have, I'll have people think about how long they want to live. And that's what we're training for. What do you want that last decade of life to look like? So, not just waiting to get there, but let's actively work towards it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Lou, and thank you, listeners. And we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to The Alchemy of Me, where we navigate the anatomy of humanity through the lens of science and spirituality. For more mind-body energy medicine concepts, tools, and practices to nourish the seeds, the light, the fire, that gold of intelligence that is you, tune in every first and third Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on transformationtalkradio.com. For more information about me and my work, please visit toniajohnson.com. That's toniajohnson.com.